Rabbi.
Boy, do y'all look forward to this every week? I mean, I can't see all the people on Facebook and I can't see the people that watch it later, but it is just so nice to see Joel Layden and Al Klein and Sally Goodman and Sharon Greenfield and Emily Cobbs and Ed and uh, Len and Barb and uh, Len Jacobs and Leland and Paula and Scott and David Weinberg, Carol, Michael, Joyce, um, and even Cantor. Who'd have thunk, huh? It's nice to see y'all. Uh, I don't know if you've noticed, but I kind of noticed this thing. You drive around, you go to a new town, and there's a billboard that says, "Our hospital is one of the top 10 hospitals in the nation." So it's got a good hospital. You go to another town and they say, "Our hospital is one of the top 10 hospitals in the nation." You go to just about every single town there is in America, and they have a hospital that's in the top 10 in the nation. Makes me think that there must be 100 hospitals in America that are in the top 10 in the nation. People have a funny way of counting things and of ordering things, but I guess it doesn't just apply to hospitals. It, it even applies to commandments. And you'd think it would be so easy. The 10 Commandments, which is this week's Torah portion, it'd be so easy to say, yeah, there's 10 of them. Bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, bing, bang, 10. But different people count them differently. The if you look at the way the Jews count it, we count the very first statement, Anochi Adonai, I am Adonai, Elohecha, Shehotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. But I am Adonai, your God, who led you out of Egypt, the land of Egypt. We count that as the first commandment. Now, it's not. Is it really commanding us? What's the? It's more like a statement. It's not like this is what you should do. I'm commanding you to do it. But we count that as the first one. And then towards the end, there's a commandment that says, "Don't covet your neighbor's wife." And then there's a space, and then it continues and says, "And don't covet your neighbor's house or the donkey um, or the cattle or the servants or anything that belongs to your neighbor." We squish those two together. Now, many Christians look at it the way that it's divided up in the sections with the gaps in the Torah, and there are 10 different gapped sections. And the first one and the second one says, "Don't make any idols or worship them." Is sort of, in Christians, that's combined with the first one. And they have coveting your neighbor's wife, and then that space there, and then coveting the other things of your neighbor. They have those as separate ones. So we have different ninth commandments. They're a little bit off when you compare them. And different branches of Christianity, like the Lutherans, counted a little bit different. Um, you should know that the Ten Commandments is in the book of Exodus. We're on Mount Sinai, and it's there. It's also in the book of Deuteronomy. We even have two versions of the Ten Commandments. It's not like we've got 20 commandments. We've got two versions of the Ten Commandments, and they're not identical. Now, you might think, I know why. And you might say, I remember God gave us the Ten Commandments and Moses broke them. And then we got another set. And so that's why there's one in Exodus and another one in Deuteronomy. And you would be very smart, but not right. Because the version that we got, the first one and the second one, were identical. God loved us that much that even though we did this horrible sin of the golden calf, God gave us a second set of 10 commandments identical to the first. That, an incredible tangible gift to us. Then why are they different between Exodus and Deuteronomy? Well, they're not that different. The one in Deuteronomy spells out a little bit more about Shabbat than the one in Exodus does. It gives a little bit more of reasons why, but if there's one part in particular that's significantly different, it's the very first word of the commandment about Shabbat. Now, in the book of Exodus, it is written, Zachor et HaShabbat. Zachor means like Yizkor, Zachor, Yizkor. It's the same word. It means remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says, Shamor et HaShabbat by Kadshehu. Shamor means observe it, do the Sabbath day, that it should be holy for you. Now, those are really different words. They're asking for different kinds of things. And there are different ways of looking at these commandments. But I think that all the other stuff, it's interesting to know how different people view the Ten Commandments. You could give a lecture on, you could write a book about the Ten Commandments. In fact, I know someone who wrote a book about the Ten Commandments. In fact, I wrote a book about the Ten Commandments. It's a kid's book, but it's an adult book disguised like a kid's book. But anyways, you could write a whole lot about the Ten Commandments. But this one in particular, this remember the Sabbath day and observe the Sabbath day, there's some really insightful stuff there for us. Our rabbis say that when God gave us the Ten Commandments, it was in kind of God talk. God said one word, and we heard Shamor and Zachor. Shamor, observe it. Zachor, remember it. We heard them both as though it were one word. And the word for a word is dibur, like a spoken echad. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Isn't that interesting? That sounds familiar, right? Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Shamor, observe, v'zachor, and remember, b'dibur echad, in one word, in one statement. That's kind of like an article of faith, that they're not different Ten Commandments, they're just different ways of us understanding what God said. God said one word, and they're like both of them are there. That's in one of the prayers that we sing at the beginning of our many prayer services. It's like a statement of faith. But what does it mean for us? Well, some people really hang on to the very first word. They hang on to the one Zachor. They hang on to it and they say, that's the really important. We need to remember why we are doing all of these things. And they study the history. And they look at the way people do it in Morocco and the way Jews have done it in Siberia and all over the world. And they really come to know when they look at the ancient hieroglyphics and the early archaeological finds, and they say, this is exactly what this means and why we have Shabbat. They totally understand it. But do they do it? They're big into understanding. But, Saturday, it's, you got to get all your work done, right? That's what they say. And then there's other people who regularly observe Shabbat. They regularly do it. They don't really know all of the whys, but they just do it all the time. And it becomes like a regular routine, kind of a discipline. They just do it all every week. They do Shabbat. But they don't really know why we're doing it. They don't know the spiritual components. They maybe don't know the reasons why we're doing it. God wants us to do both. And it's not just like that for Shabbat. God wants us to know why, to remember why we're doing this. Because God created the world in 7 days, and that's built into the rhythm of the world. And we need for our bodily selves and our spiritual selves to have a day of rest. We need to remember that. And it connects us to Jews all over and connects us to God. Remember the Sabbath. But not just, don't just remember, oh, what a really interesting thing to do. You got to do it. How many of you know somebody, certainly not you, you know somebody who has a really lovely treadmill or a stair stepper or an elliptical or a stationary bicycle, a really good one. And they know why, how important it is, and they use it to hang up their clothes. And that's what it's there for mostly. That's certainly not you. I'm seeing some smiles on some people's faces. Certainly, it would not be you. But those are people who understand but don't do it. Shabbat is something to be done. When it comes to Jewish rituals, even some of the obscure ones, I look at those two things, that Shamor and Zachor, the observe it and remember it. And I say, you know, like what I told you for a couple of days ago this week for Tisha B'Av, I say, you might not be used to doing it all, but there's something about it that's important for us today. There's something about reading about a catastrophe that happened to us when the temple was destroyed and the ensuing plague and what it was like, and the hunger and the desolation, the isolation, that contains something for us today. If you're not going to do it all, at least remember why we're doing it and do something to mark Tisha B'Av. You can't live every day as vengeance for the Holocaust. You can't. But you need to remember the Holocaust, never forget. And you need to do something about it. Do something about it. Shamor, do something, v'zachor, and remember. You can't be on top of every country in the world and every hurricane that happens everywhere. Even in America, you can't stay on top of all of them. But you need to make yourself aware. Remember, we're all Americans. Be aware of what's going on. And you have to do something. You don't have to rush to every crisis event. But if you hear about it, you got to do something. There's a lot in that. And it leads to life. Because if we don't remember, we move away from life. If we forget, we're like exiled from life. And if we don't do, if we're not involved in doing, we move away from life. Remember and do. Remember and do. They're sort of in there together. It's a hint. It's an important bit of wisdom for us. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to have every answer, but you got to know some of why. And you got to know to do something. You got to do. Anyways,